Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I apologize for my absence last week. My family needed some attention, and so I decided kind of last minute to cut the stream off. By the way of updates, Material Design and XAML, there was a release that went out, the 4.4 release. For those people who haven't seen it, there is a kind of a big bug in it that is tripping up a lot of people, specifically if you have any context menus, so any of the right-click menus, the background color is not being appropriately set, and so you end up getting a transparent background for your context menu. So a couple workarounds. You can either go and set the background color on your context menu. You can update to the latest 4.50 preview NuGet packages, which have the fix, or stay rolled back on 4.3. So I'll let you pick what is best for your project. My intent is to probably roll out 4.5 pretty quick because that bug has been generating a lot of issues, and I'd like to kind of squash those as quick as possible. So I apologize for the flaw in there, but it is fixed in the latest preview NuGet packages for anybody who wants to take a look at those. So for tonight, there was a question that came up on the chat room, and I got a little distracted with all the other stuff going on and didn't get a chance to circle back to it. But it was this question here of, is there an example for a list box or a card list as described here that looks kind of like this? And I've got a slightly blown up picture of it here. So a couple key things to note about this style. So there's several different elements on each of these list box items. There's some sort of like name, I assume a person's first name. Potentially a title or a role, I guess, because we've got like web design. And then this guy here, which is a bit of a description. We've got a location with some icons, some sort of credit thing. We've got this little time countdown thingy up here. And then the hard part to see is right along this edge, and maybe it's actually easier in this one. It's really hard to see. But right along this edge, you can see that the selection's been overridden so that the selected item in this list box is actually just this kind of horizontal bar along this side here. So, sounded like fun. I said, hey, why not? Let's build a custom list box. So, that's what I figured I'd do tonight. So, if you are in a position where you've got some graphic designer or somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'd really love it if the app could look like this. Tonight's stream will be an example of let's make it look like this. I actually have a kind of a pie in the sky dream that I had pitched to some of my colleagues where we do a hackathon one weekend where there's a bunch of different websites that kind of just give you style and theme ideas. And my thought was, hey, everybody just pick a style and then implement it in your framework and language of choice. Doesn't matter what that is. Pick your favorite. But the goal is to get as close to pixel perfect to that design as you can get. See what happens. Sometimes it's fun as a way to get familiar with other languages or frameworks and whatnot. So that's what I figured we would do tonight, is we would take a crack at implementing this list view. So off in my material design examples repository, which I will pull a link to because I was not prepared with it ahead of time, and so I am only mildly feeling time while I go and quickly click through and find it. There. See? Flawless transition. So this project is a new one in there. It's not pushed yet, but it will be shortly. Figured I'd just put it under ListBox, and I'll call it ListBox Custom Style. Because that's really what we're going to do, is we're going to build out a custom style. This is a pretty standard Net6 WPF project. You will note I have pulled in material design. I've elected to stay on the 4.3 version for now, just so that I don't have to fight the context menu bug at the moment. And then I've also got the MVVM toolkit pulled in. So nothing too fancy. And then on my main window, you'll note I have gone through and apply the material design style to it. And in my app.xaml, I have just a little bit of stuff going on here. So base theme is being inherited. Windows is set to dark theme, so you'll note my window defaults to that. And then some primary colors and stuff slapped in there. So Wow, Visual Studio, Visual Studio has not been doing well for me today, and I'm a little terrified because it's going to be a real short stream. Real short stream if this thing's going to hang like this. I'm wondering if it's got... So sorry, one second. Let me clear some stuff out. I'm just going to clear some stuff out, and Wow, really? Really, Visual Studio? You're going to be like that, huh? I just installed latest previews yesterday, so that's probably not helping anything. Yay for preview builds. There's lots of cool stuff, and sometimes stuff that makes your app go boom. Yeah, well, Visual Studio, I'm sorry, but we already sent feedback for a crash once. So I'm going to try to dial this guy down. Okay, we're going to see if it plays nicer with only being fed a single project rather than a solution that has like 116. Wait, what? What? I double clicked on the individual project and it reloaded the entire solution. I'm impressed. Visual Studio, how did you do that? Come on. Come on, over here. You gonna be happier this time? Okay. I'm gonna collapse. I don't know if it's the designer, but we're just gonna collapse the designer. Just in the off chance that has anything to do with it. Okay. Let's prove that we can launch an empty app. Should not be a hard thing to do. Huzzah, we've got an empty app. Like I said, background's dark theme for no other reason other than... and we're going to collapse that too. No other reason this is dark aside from the fact that my Windows theme is set to dark. So that is where that's coming from. Okay, so we need a couple things to start with. Let's start with our view model because we don't even have one of those yet. So go ahead and get ourselves a new main window view model. Because we are going to need to bind this to some data source. And so let's do main window view model. Come on. Wow, you are dragging today, Visual Studio. I do not know what is going on. So we will make it an observable object, which is the base class from the Microsoft MVVM library. And then file, scope, namespace, all the things because they are awesome. Code cleanup. Everyone's happy. Okay. So inside of here, we are going to need... Oh, I got my question over. Whoop. But worth noting, inside of here, we're going to need to make up an item that contains all of those things. So let's make a... Just make an item. And the item is going to need... here, can I put this guy? We're going to take you. I'm going to put you down here behind me. Or I can keep you out of the way. So we can keep an eye on it for a moment. Okay, so it's gonna need something like let's see, public string, a name, maybe for like that Reese. Public string technology, I guess. I don't actually know what this data set is, so I'm struggling to come up with good names. Let's see. Public string description. Thank you, IntelliCode. You are awesome. Okay, and then we're going to need... So something that's worth noting when you're designing your view models, the view model's job is to support the view. So one thing I'm noticing right here is that I've got a location here, which is clearly city, state, zip for those people, or city, state, and zip code for those people outside the United States, or postal code. So I've got that, and I could do that just as a string. And it's tempting to group this nationwide down here, but I'm going to separate it for no other reason other than I've got a separate bit of font for this. This is not quite the same. So we're going to break that up. So public string location. And I would totally expect that in a real view model, these are probably not just strings. They might be stronger data types. We'll call that scope. Or how about reach? Yeah, we'll call it reach. And then public int number of credits. And then how about public date time posted at? Boom. Because we got that little guy in the top right hand corner. And I think that covers all of our stuff. What's interesting to me is some of these things have additional details and some don't. Meh. We won't worry about it. I don't know what the condition is where you would display one or the other. And there's this little blue icon down here that I don't quite know what to do with. Sorry. I realize that my cursor is floating behind the image so people can't see what I'm pointing at. So there's the little blue icon down on the third item next to the name. I don't know what the condition is for that. We'll start here. Okay, so public list items get, and actually we're going to default from, rather than list, we're going to go observable collection, because we might do something fancy where we have this thing, you know, maybe on a timer or something, we populate new items or whatever. So we're going to start with this items.add new item, and we're just gonna code in the ones that we know we're gonna need. So how about name gets Reese? Whoa, hey, not what I asked you to do. Thank you. Let's see. So technology is going to get web design, and then we will do description gets words. See, location gets Clarksville, Tennessee 37042. Sure. And then we will do, say, reach gets nationwide. Now, you'll note something I've done here. In the description, this thing has the parens around nationwide. I am going to omit those just as a means of showing some techniques. Because oftentimes you might have data coming from, say, a database or similar where those parens aren't actually part of your data, but you want it displayed a particular way. So we're gonna do that just as a means of showing that off. Let's see, num credits is 28. And then we will do posted at datetime.now minus time span from minutes to back it up a couple minutes. So it'll be close. Yeah, we'll do something about like that. And we could add more items, but this will be enough for us to get started. So let's start with putting in a list box, because that's what we do. That's what we ultimately want to style. We're going to have an item source. We're going to bind it to items. And this thing should prompt me to set my data context. Thank you. Appreciate that. So now by setting that D data context, I now get IntelliSense about what is actually on my view model. So it now knows my view model contains an items property, which I can bind to, which is great. Okay, let's go ahead and turn off target image for now. We might turn that guy back on when we need it. Okay, so we've got that. We're going to do a list box item template. We're gonna end up needing to do a couple things here, but we're gonna start here. So data type It's going to be X type of item from local. So in case it's not quite obvious to people what just happened, the local colon represents a namespace. So inside of XAML, every type is effectively prefixed with a namespace, colon, and a type name. The reason these ones up here don't need a colon namespace is because the XML namespace include that's bringing these in from up here doesn't have a name or an alias attached to it. So because of this, because grid lives in this namespace, it is the default or unaliased one. But because item lives in my namespace underneath local, I have to prefix it with local colon. It's just the way it works. And it's unhappy that it doesn't exist. Sure. That's probably just because it hasn't been compiled yet. We'll compile and it'll be happy and everyone will be lovely. Yay. Okay, aside from the noble reference types warnings, it's happy. Here, I'm gonna just shut it up about those noble reference type warnings. Hush. There, happy? Okay, problem solved. Okay, so for our data template, and I'm gonna pop the image back up here again, and I'm gonna actually do one more thing. So for this, we're just gonna shrink that guy down a little bit, just so we can, and I might just put him in the corner. So Reese, you're our target. Okay. So just looking at this, I can see a couple things that are going on that I probably want to do. And the important thing when you're doing WPF layout design is think about how you want things to resize as things get bigger and smaller. So in this case, we've got a list box. It feels like it's static width, maybe. But I am trying to think about, okay, if this thing were to grow in size, either bigger or smaller in width, how would I want that to grow? Simple enough. So I think what we're looking to do is, this feels like a grid with two columns, where the minutes ago and the credits are in my right column. And then I'm thinking, let's see, one row at the top for the name, another row for the technology, third row for the description, fourth row for credits. Yeah, we might just do a bunch of rows. Let's start with that. So grid column definitions gets easy. So the first column is going to be 1 star or fill, and the second column is going to be width auto. So this means the rightmost column is only going to be as wide as the contents, and the other column will fill the whole space. We'll see in a minute, this doesn't matter too much, but that's how we're going to do it. Okay, row definition. So we need a bunch of rows. So we're going to need row definition, height, auto for the first one. Let's see. And then let's see. That's the technology. That's going to be the description. We might end up changing this off auto to something like max height. We'll see. Let's see. 4 is going to be credits and address. And 5 is going to be location. I'm sort of wondering if, because that Nationwide is right underneath Clarksville and indented over, I'm almost wondering if I do that as a separate option. I'm thinking 3 columns now. Thinking 3 columns. Width auto. So something in UI design to be conscious of is vertical lines. So oftentimes what people will do is they will take the layout and just kind of draw straight vertical lines where there's obvious alignment happening. So in this case, we've got one obvious alignment along the left side where all of the text is butted up against where we've got the icon. Just to the right of that address icon, we've kind of got another vertical line, at least in the bottom 2 rows. And then obviously on the far right, we've got another one where like the 2 minutes ago and the 28 credits, their right edge lines up. So those are the lines that I'm seeing that are obvious. So I'm thinking we're going 3 columns. And it's okay. So sometimes people see the kind of like these staggered grid layouts and they're like, oh no, what do I do? It's like, it's okay to make things span multiple columns. So what we're going to end up doing is things like that description, they're going to span the first two columns. But things like the address and the reach for Clarksville and Nationwide, those are going to start in our second column. Whereas the other ones are going to start in the first column, but column span. And so the width of the first column is going to end up being somewhat limited to just this little icon here, which is good. That's kind of what we're going for. Okay, so let's keep going. So we've got the grid. The grid's going to need some sort of margin around it because let's start with just something like a margin 10 because I'm seeing a lot of space around this. It's obvious, and actually maybe we do something different. So 20 on the left, maybe 10 on the top. That may be a little too generous. Cut this down to 15. 10 on the top, maybe about 10 on the right. And then let's do maybe, I guess some of this margin here is coming from the previous one. So let's do another 10 along the bottom. That'll be fine. We'll adjust as we go. Okay, so next up, we need text block, text, binding. And because we know the data type here, my IntelliSense can give me useful stuff. We're going to start with name. And we're going to do something like font weight bold. This is just going to get us close. And the key thing here, this name is going to column span 2. So he's starting in our first row and first column, but we're going to allow him to float from this little auto width column into the second one. Let's see, next one, text block, text, binding. Let's see, we call that technology. And don't really want to set a font weight on it, but I do want to set a grid. Let's see, we're gonna be explicit here. Column 0. Technically 0 is the default, but sometimes it's good to be explicit. Grid row 1, grid column span 2. We'll do something like that. That'll get us pretty close. Next down. Let's see, and then this is going to be description. Now this one we're going to end up having to fight with a little bit. So let's see, row 2, column span 2. Now we're going to want this to do text wrapping wrap, but we are going to have an issue with length of the text in this. So we may end up having to go and type some of this stuff out. We'll figure it out. Get it going first. So let's do text block, text. Oh, actually, no. Now we're down into we're going to do a pack icon. So this is a material design control. Boom. Kind map pin. Is there like a pin? I don't know what that's going to look like. We're going to try it. That may not be the right icon. We might have to look. When the family calls and wants tech support. I know how that goes, Robert. Welcome aboard. I got a little picture in the bottom left from somebody in the chat room. We're trying to make the picture. That's the goal tonight. So, it's going to be a lesson in styling in WPF to make it match the picture. So for the pin, we are intentionally just going to put it in our first column, third row, but not span because we want to stop there. Let's see here. We just grab this one. Whoop. Okay, so next one we've got what I call location. And this is going to be row 3. And this is not going to have any column span. And the key part here is this is going to actually be grid column 1. Okay, that gets us to there. Now, we've got this little doohickey for the num credits. Now, I realize there's a little icon or similar there. We'll come back to that. Maybe we should just adjust it now. We'll just do it now. Okay, so I'm going to put a stack panel, orientation horizontal, inside of my grid. And I'm going to take this little guy and I'm going to say grid row 3 and grid column 2. I'm going to shove that guy on over. And then inside of here, we're going to do another pack icon. Kind, I don't know, what is that? Icon's hard to see. Is it like money? I don't know. We're gonna just use a dollar icon for now. We'll come back to it. We'll probably have to change up the size of these icons too, because they are almost guaranteed to be wrong at this point. But then we want to do number of credits. But the key thing here is number of credits is just an int. So we're actually going to do a string format on this guy. And we're going to do something like this. Credits. So people who are familiar with C# string formatting, this part of this probably makes perfect sense. Take the 0th parameter, which will come from number of credits, and slap it inside of a string format call, and then it'll append credits on the end of it. If you can spell credits, spelling's hard. Credits. Yeah, that's fun. But this little double curly brace oftentimes will confuse people. So what happens is inside of XAML, the curly brace is special. It's usually used to indicate a markup extension, such as like, say, binding or maybe static resource. And so if you want to do a string format where there's that leads with a curly brace, it would try to interpret this 0 as a markup extension. So if you need to use a curly brace at the beginning of your string, open curly brace, close curly brace is the way of escaping it so that it knows everything following that is just part of the string and not needed. So that's all that is to indicate, hey, yes, there's a curly brace at the start of this thing. Please don't treat it like a markup extension. Treat it like a string, and away you go. One of those hidden things. Okay, so that gets us into there. I'm realizing I missed this little guy up here for date time, so we're going to come back up here. And let's do, I think I actually want a border here. So this guy we're going to put in a grid column 3, grid row 0. And then what depth of things did you have to dive into to learn about double curly brace? I think it was probably the first time I started doing string formats, and I went, what the heck? Because that's usually how it goes. People learn about string formats and they're like, oh, this is awesome. And they start using them. And it works great right up until you want the curly brace at the beginning of your string format. And then it falls apart. You will find it is in the documentation, and I have found it before. I just don't remember where. Probably somewhere around the string format docs. Okay, inside of this border, I'm going to put the text block here for posted at. And this guy here, we're going to need to come back to because this isn't going to be quite right. Because we actually want to end up doing some calculation here. And so this isn't going to quite do it for us. So we'll need to deal with this. And I'm realizing we may want to make this maybe like a time span instead. We'll leave it as daytime. That'll be a good value converter. So we'll deal with this. But we are going to need to background, dynamic resource. Let's see. I probably want. Do I want like a light background? A little light background. I don't know what the appropriate one is here. We might have to go look up the brushes. I might want the secondary color regardless. Here, we'll just do this. Teal. Boom. Problem solved. Which we should really use a theme brush, but we'll come back and change that. Okay, there's that. And then the last thing we've got down below, let's see, text block. Let's see, text, binding, what do we call that? Reach. And this is once again going to be a string format because we didn't put the parens around it inside of our stuff. Oh, actually, I forgot a font weight up here. Font weight, bold, like that. And so we want to put parens around our thing. So in this case, we can just do parens, curly brace, because the leading brace isn't at the beginning, so it's not going to get confused. We'll do something like that. Let's see, and then this needs to be grid column 1, grid row 4. Credits is bold as well. Oh, thank you very much. See? Okay, so font weight, bold. Bold. Okay, so this is going to get us not all the way there, but it's going to get us pretty close. It's going to get us close. And you'll note, so the question initially, I'll pop this real quick for you too, Robert. So this was the question here, and it was specifically calling out a card list. But in this case, it's not really... In material design, the card has like a border and a shadow and depth to it. And that's not really what we want for that picture. So even though it said card, we don't really want a card. Okay, where'd my app go? Naturally, fails miserably. That's great. I have a strong suspicion that because our constructor has 0 references, it probably means I was an idiot and didn't initialize it anywhere. So that's a problem. So we're gonna not do that anymore. So how about DataContext gets new main window view model. Boom. Okay, that will probably make this work a little better if we actually assign our data context. Okay, so that got us a little closer. And I'm going to actually change a couple things out here real quick that I'm noticing. So first thing, base theme light. We're going to explicitly make this, I don't think whoa. Points awarded, hot reload. I didn't expect you to handle that. Okay, points to hot reload. Okay, so that got us close-ish, but we're gonna put you over here on the side a little bit, and let's just move you over, and we're gonna do one of these maneuvers and one of these maneuvers, and we're just gonna shrink you up. I'm gonna put you right there. Hot reload worked this time. So Microsoft's been doing a bunch of work on the hot reload stuff. Like it oftentimes it works to a point, and then you restart your app. And when it works really bloody well. So okay, so we're gonna start cleaning some of this stuff up a little bit. So a couple things I'm noticing. One, our font size on Reese is a little too small. Let's bump that up to like a 16. That looks a little closer. Maybe we could probably even go 18. 16 is probably closer. Boom. Okay. We need a little margin around this guy, I think. So let's put like, I want vertical margin on him. So I'm going to go 0.5. A little bit of space there. That looks better. This guy here, you'll note how the teal expanded out. That's not quite what we want. We want it to be a little more constrained to its stuff. So we're going to go vertical alignment center to keep that thing lined up. We're going to do, and at some point we'll need to change these out. Let me, hang on. While I'm thinking about it. Posted font needs to be white text. Yeah, I agree. I'm thinking what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop beating around the bush and just go look up what those brushes are, because I honestly can't bloody remember. Hold that thought. Just realized I should probably navigate and then bring the browser onto the screen, because I don't know what's going to show up in my feed. Okay, so I think there's actually a nice wiki page that I did. All around brushes. Brush names. That sounds like remarkably exactly what I want. Okay, so I think I want to go with secondary hue mid brush is what I want this actually to be. So let's go with dynamic resource, secondary hue mid brush. That's not bad. That's pretty close. Not bad for guessing. Let's see. And then this needs to be the foreground color. And so the wonderful part about doing this is if I use this same brush, you'll note that there is both there's a foreground version as well. So I'm hoping it defaults to white. It doesn't. That's disappointing. That is disappointing. We might just hard code this to white for now, but that does raise a bit of a concern. The other thing is this thing has a bit of margin around it, probably only 2 or 3. This guy has, I'm going to start dropping some of these things down onto their own lines. Also, it looks bold as well. Yeah, I think I agree with you. So let's font weight up to bold. Yeah, that looks a little closer. I think I want to get it down to showing 2 minutes ago. Let's also change this guy up because the whole reason for using a border was to set the corner radius because those are rounded on the edges. I think maybe a little more like that. That was weird. That doesn't look bad. Go with about a 3 on the corner radius. Okay, we'll circle back to that in just a minute. There is a slightly... There's a lighter color to some of this font too. More lighter than what I've got here, because even Clarksville isn't quite as dark as Reese, so we might have to lighten that up just a tad. And there's a couple tricks to this. So that's worth a quick comment too. In this case, I'm going to try to go for pixel perfect matching design. With that said, there are trade-offs that I'm going to make that would not work if you say, hey, I want this to match exactly this design, but then I also want it to be dynamic and say scale to different themes. Those are kind of at odds a little bit. Like, you can't have dynamic stuff and exact matching design at the same time. You either are fixed or you're dynamic, because once you say dynamic, you kind of have to start adding in some fudge room. So, for example, like even on the material design stuff, we have on this bundled theme, there is a concept of color adjust, where it will, if you turn this on, it'll actually set your color adjust to automatically set contrast ratios. So note, as soon as I turn this on, you know, the color adjustment started tweaking things, and you saw the teal change color a little bit. The entire point of that is it's attempting to adjust contrast ratios. And actually, I'm willing to bet if I do that, kind of wondering if it changed this guy here to be the... It did. So you'll note, in order to get good contrast, it figured out that it needed to flip the colors, darken the green, and go to white. Which is great if what you want is nice accessibility. It's horrible if you want pixel perfect design. So the entire grid, you set the background to gray. However, it seems like it goes from white to gray as a gradient on the bottom. So in this case, I didn't actually set the background, and this is something we're going to adjust in a minute, because this is the ListBox styling that's taking over. It's really hard to see here. I think it's a little easier here. the selected item isn't actually a selection of the whole item. You just get this little itty bitty, it looks like a dark blue bar kind of on the side. I don't really like it. I think, but depending on what you're building, if selection of your list box isn't overly valuable, yeah, blue bar on the left on the selected item. And right now we're getting this whole background thing, which we're going to throw that away and fix that. Okay, so we'll come back to that. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the color adjustment because I'd rather it behave the way I want. And we're going to just hard code this foreground to white for now. And usually you'd want to use an off white, not a pure white, just for readability. Okay, but we will clean that up. So web design is our technology. We definitely want, so I'm going to just start putting some spaces around here. So we definitely want a little vertical margin on this. Let's do 3 to start. Too low. 5 to start. That looks a little better. Let's go to 6. Yeah, we'll go with this. And I think the font size needs to be bumped up a little bit. So we're going to do 14 on that. And then to get that kind of lighter effect, I'm going to just set like a 0.8 opacity on it, just to let it fade a little bit. Not a lot. Might even go down to 70. Might be a little too much. I'm going to go 80. 80%, just to give it a little fade out there. Okay, and I'm going to go update my description to actually match, so we can actually see something that's a little closer. Create a new website to advertise my business services, to sell products and other cool things that are really long text. Boom. See, it put ... I had to expand on it. Okay. So that's obviously not going to pick it up, but I wonder if I hit that. Oh, because it's already done the binding, it's not going to pick it up. Okay, fine. We'll relaunch just so we can pick it up. Website 2. Oh, did I typo that? Create a new... Oh. Website. It's not a period, it's a slash. Oh. Thank you. I'm glad you can see my pictures better than I can, Robert. What can I say? I'm blind. Okay, so perfect. This is actually getting us down a little bit. So I think what I'm also going to do here is set this guy up with a max width. Talk about blind leading the blind. Let's see. So max width 500. So just to make sure that this thing caps appropriately. There we go. That'll work. Just want to make sure that we can force that wrapping. And we're going to kind of get a little bit of this. The other thing, so for this description, I'm going to drop this down. Okay, so a few things. So column span should actually be 3. Because you can see this text kind of floats past. But you'll also note, oh, I think it probably would go all the way to the end. Business is just a long word. We might close off this max width a little bit more just to bring it down so it wraps at about the same place. I'm going to bump the font size up just a hair on this. So how about font size 13? That'll probably be closer. And then this guy here, I'm going to do the same opacity trick. And we're going to go with 0.7. I didn't even go down just a hair. Got to be really careful doing this because you can kill readability pretty fast. We're going to go down just a little bit. Okay. And then I want to put a little margin around this guy. specifically top margin of maybe another, what did I do on the last one? 4. Because I'm not worried about the bottom edge just yet. It's going to grow. The guy down below him is going to push him down. Okay, so that got me a little closer there. The 28 credits is fine-ish. Obviously, the icon's wrong and the pin is wrong. So let's go find those icons really quick. If we go, so material design icons. So materialdesignicons.com. This is the source of the icons. So let's go with, come on, load. Let's see. Map. I don't know where I'm gonna find that pin. Yeah, that one. What's the name of? What is your name? Map marker or pin? MDI map marker. Map marker. So let's change that up to map marker. Boom. So that got me the right icon there. Boy, I might have to zoom in on that image. One second. I'm gonna get me a up close version of that image so I can look at it. It's almost like I don't know what that symbol is supposed to be. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna come here. We're gonna do something that's like money. How about circle? I just kind of want a filled in circle with a symbol sitting there. I was gonna go with the C, but I realized that's kind of like, I just need a good one to fill the void for now. I don't know what a good one is. Let's just do this one. So alpha C circle. So if we come down here, alpha C, boom. Something like that gets me in something in that vicinity. We're gonna do, I think I'm gonna do the margin on the text box because I'd like to put a little space between it, just to kick it over a little bit. Same can be said of this guy here, but in this case, I kind of want the padding to go on the pack icon for the marker, because if I increase the padding on the map marker icon, it'll increase the width of my first column and push both of these items over, which is what I want. If I do the margin on Clarksville, it'll push the address over and leave nationwide where it's at, which is not what I want. So we're going to go up here and do a little margin on the right. So left, top, right, bottom. So anybody who has trouble remembering this, I always just think, because I took a lot of math classes in college. Oh, thank you for the follow or the party. Welcome, everyone. So, for all of the newcomers dropping in, oh, Code Life, welcome. I hope you had a good stream. Tonight, what we are building out is I got this picture from one of the chat rooms of somebody looking to try to build out a list box that looks like this. So, tonight's adventure is to make a list box look like the picture. I'm sorry, like the picture. That way, left and right is hard. But so welcome everyone. Close. In this case, this is WPF XAML, but a lot of this same stuff would apply to either Xamarin Forms or the soon-to-be GA or not Xamarin, Microsoft and Maui. This seems fun. I enjoy this stuff. I very much like doing kind of pixel perfect designs. At a previous employer I was spoiled. We had a really great designer who would hand down beautiful pictures. And as the developers, it was our job to make the beautiful picture a reality. I have a pipe dream to do a hackathon with my company at some point where people break into teams. Everybody gets, they get to pick a design, pick any language or framework of choice, and implement the design as close to pixel perfect as you can. Which, in my mind, is a great way to learn new frameworks. I was using this in a desktop app. Yes, still a desktop app. It is still, in my opinion, one of the best desktop frameworks. There have been a lot of attempts to, we will say, usurp it. Things like the Universal Windows Platform, UWP, WinUI 2, and the soon-to-be released WinUI 3. WinUI 3 has a lot of potential, and it looks like it might be the next big thing. I'm hoping it is, because it looks really slick. It's kind of, when they first did UWP instead of WPF, they kind of stripped the feature set, and people kind of got a bad taste in their mouth a little bit. And they since fixed a lot of the problems, but people still had the bad taste in their mouth. So WinUI 3 kind of aims to fix a lot of the problems and make it familiar and friendly and happy without all the extra baggage. So it looks cool. It looks awesome. It's just not GA yet. So I'm not holding my breath until it launches. Okay, so we got this down here, and this little bit we'll note is all bad taste takes a while for old. Yep. I completely agree. So part of the reason why I did this stack panel down here to kind of contain some of these things is I now have a nice, easy way of cheating some of these. Oh, hang on. I messed this up. This is... Oh, no, I didn't. Okay, location's up here. I need to start separating some of these things. White space. I need white space so I can see what I'm doing because I'm messing up. Or white space. Okay. So location, the pack, and this pack icon needs to go. See, this is why white space is useful. You can start to group things where you want them. So I kind of want to fade all of these guys out a little bit. So I'm going to go with the same opacity trick. And we're going to go like 0.8 on there. And I can probably even go down a little bit. Yeah, let's go with 70%. That looks kind of fun. Try that. That's not bad. We'll go with it. And then down here, I can kind of cheat, and I can apply it at a higher level. Get that guy faded out a little bit, and it'll apply to both the icon and the 28 credits. Great. And then this guy down here is, I think, the most faded of all of these things, but it's just slight. It's probably close to the description, I'm guessing. We'll do something like that. Okay, so that's not bad. That gets us pretty close, at least in terms of some of this layout. I am realizing that I actually probably want the bottom of this margin to be bigger, because I don't really have a simple way to push one of these things up, and I'd rather just have, because the description is spreading the entire row, I'd kind of rather have it push down on everything. So I think we're going to do that. Just have it push everything down a little bit. That's not bad at all, I think. So I think the next big hurdle is this guy up here, because this isn't quite what we want. We want this thing to actually show us like 2 minutes ago. And just with the other, so I can raise this back up. Oh, I guess I got to do this. I can't go up. I got to go down. So at least in terms of the screenshot I was given, this thing just shows in minutes. So whether that's desirable or whatnot, but at least in terms of the design I got, minutes is the key. So we want to break this guy down to just minutes ago. And so we could cheat. We could totally cheat. Because right now we're the ones who set it to datetime.now. time span from minutes. So we could make this a time span. Actually, let's do that. We could do a value converter, but all the value converter would do is be subtract datetime.now from it to get it back. So we'll just go bit. We'll just do this. So time span from minutes. Okay, so that means this guy here, we're going to stop debugging real quick. You, doc, stay. So now that you are a time span, we can do another string format. Now, the cool trick we can do, let's see, C#, time span. I can't type. One moment. Okay, Mountain Dew. Now we can type. Time span, custom format strings. Ba-ba-bum. So this whole list here on the left. Oh, I gotta. Whoop. This whole list here on the left for numeric format strings, datetime format strings, time span format strings. This is a lovely page of the docs. Absolutely wonderful. Go here all the time. So there's the link. C# is the best. You're not going to hear any disagreement from me. It is my favorite. But what we can do here is we can drop down and we can drop down here into the time span ones and go hunting for what we're looking for. Number of whole minutes in the time interval that aren't included as part of hours or days. Single digit minutes. So we can kind of see this thing here. So you'll note, let's see, 6 days, 14 hours, and 8 minutes, which is why this is going down to 14 hours and 8 minutes. I'm trying to decide if that's what we want to use or if we want to do something slightly different. I was kind of hoping this thing, it's probably fair enough to just do minutes. Yeah, we'll just do M. We'll just do an M format string. And again, I don't know the domain for this. Let's see. So we got to do whoop, see. So okay, so here's the fun trick. So once again, for the format string inside of a binding, because the open curly brace is at the beginning of the string format, we have to escape it with open close curly braces because XAML. And then we want to get this guy here for minutes, and that did not format the way I expected. So let's see here. Why are you not formatting the way one expects? Should have just been that, I would have thought. Unless I'm missing an escape character. Am I crazy? There we go. Okay. Come back here. That guy. That gets us to where we want it. Okay, so we just needed to, if we want it by itself, to have the percent there, and then put our picture back up. Whoop. So we want to tack on at the end, M ago. Okay, that gets us pretty close. And then I want to do some horizontal alignment, center. Okay, now this guy, you'll note, is currently expanding to fill the width of my third column. So if we recall, this column has a width of auto, and the things that are in the third column are the credits and this. Now, we don't want the border to do that, and by default, WPF controls want to fill their available space. So because the column is wide enough to hold 28 credits plus an icon, the border is expanding to fill that same amount of space. And in our case, we really want to say, don't fill the whole space, anchor yourself to the right. So that is as simple as horizontal alignment, right. Kick that guy over. Seems pretty good. I kind of want to just bump that margin up just a little bit. That feels there. That feels a little less squished. A little less squished. Okay. 2 minutes ago. Great. And now all we have to do, so I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to horizontal line him left just so he kicks up against the edge here. Actually, before we do that, let's get the selection working. So right now we've got this black gray stuff on selection, and that's not really what we want. This is kind of close, but not really. And this is actually coming from the fact of how the material design library styles the list box by default. This matches the material design 2 spec. This is what most people would be expecting, pun intended. But in this case, we just want the little blue bar on the left. So to do that, we do a list box item container style. So people who tuned in 2 weeks ago, boy, has it been that long? Long time ago. There was a question that came up about like nested list boxes, and I kind of started diving into this topic a little bit, where the item template represents the way the content should be laid out inside of the item. But wrapping that item template is the actual item container, because inside of a list box, the next item down, logically, is the list box item object. And then inside of the list box item is your content. Well, sometimes you want to control that list box item and how it looks. So what we can do here is we can do style, target type, list box item. And we're going to go based on static resource material, design, list box item. So we'll do something like that. And this shouldn't do anything. So in XAML, based on just gives you an inheritance type hierarchy. So very similar to how you might do inheritance in C#, where one class derives from another. In this case, we have a style, effectively just deriving from another style. In this case, the style that was being applied previously, so our look is identical. Now, we need to kill that selection, and I honestly don't recall how to do that off the top of my head, but having access to the material design source code, I can just go and look. Because I think what we're going to want to do is just swap out the entire template from this. So let's do, I was going to open up the source code, but let's just actually go back to the library and we'll do it here. Oh, because this gives me an opportunity to show off something else that's cool. Okay, for anybody who hasn't seen this, on GitHub, when you get to a repo and you want to search the source code, there's a couple options. You can search up here, or, and I might propose this is better, press the period key on your keyboard. You'll note it switches the github.com to github.dev, and now you have VS Code in a browser. This is awesome. Because you'll note, I didn't have to fork or do anything to the repo. I just open it. And you get a whole bunch of cool stuff in here in terms of what we can do. Once it's done loading itself up, it needs to think about what it has done. Hey, Robert. Thank you for the subscription again. But yes, this is amazing, assuming it decides it actually is going to load appropriately. And when we get over to search, you can do a couple different options. So in our case, we want this. Search path was not found. This appears to have lost its mind and not loaded the repo appropriately. Okay. The demo gods did not like me. We're going to try again. This time with another can of Mountain Dew. I assure you, most of the time this worked flawlessly, and it's just because I'm streaming that it's decided it doesn't want to work and behave. Huh? Wonder why it's choking on this. GitHub. This would be a really bad time for GitHub to have an outage. Let's try that one more time. Let's try that one more time. Load appropriately. There we go. This is what it's supposed to do. This is what it's supposed to do. Okay. Now you got the repo. You can browse the source code. It's stream shy. Yes. Yes. That sounds about right. That sounds about right. Okay. So we could go through and I have a pretty good idea of where the file is, but let's pretend like we don't. Come over to our search box and we go search. Isn't this wonderful? Isn't this wonderful? Depending on your settings, you might get a little prompt. There is a, by default, the search uses the GitHub search, but you can tell it to create a local index. And I'm pretty sure on my settings, I said always create the local index and stop asking me, which is why mine just defaulted into it. It means your browser tab is going to take up a little more space because it has to have that index, but it also means you can search around and go really quick. So in our case, I'm interested in the ListBox style material design ListBox. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at it. It's so pretty. So pretty. And then all the browser stuff just works. The other cool thing, I'll point this out. This is even better. You can get extensions in here too. So you'll note I've got my Git lens set up in here. I'm on the preview insidery one, which has support for the in-browser bits. So wonderful. So wonderful. So worth noting, when you launch into VS Code in the browser, this isn't the same as like the code spaces or similar that they have. There is no compute backend, which means you can't launch any extensions like, say, OmniSharp for C#, because that requires an OmniSharp server to be running and doing the processing. The only extensions that work for this are the ones that don't require any sort of backend compute. So you will note the extensions list here is significantly reduced, but there is some stuff. Okay, all of that to say, we want to come down here and we want to do some fancy styling in this case. So the unfortunate part is most of this style that we have here, excuse me, is all boiled down to a few key things. And you'll note there is this attached property for show selection. So if we were to take this guy here, and I can show this off. Oh, no problem. I love showing this kind of stuff off. One of my favorites. Let's see, and I have to do material design : because that's the name of my namespace. Let's see, and then setter value false. So you'll note now it doesn't show any selection, which is fine, but that's not actually what we want. I still want selection. I just want it to look different. And the unfortunate part here is the moment we say we want it to look different, the problem being is I want to actually change up the template that's being generated for each of these items. Because you'll note that there's this mouse over background, the selection border, there's the whole ripple thing going on, all of this stuff. And there's all of this cool animation stuff. And this is all around doing the fancy selection and the mouse over border. We don't want any of this. So unfortunately, in order to get this thing working, what we actually want to do is change up the template for our ListBox item. Now, that sounds like a lot of code, and it kind of is. But the nice part is you don't have to start from scratch. You can just start by copying the template setter. So recall, so we're going to get rid of this because that's not going to matter. We're just going to paste in the setter. What did I do? I copied the opening tag for the setter, and I missed the closing tag. So you should, if you copy the setter, copy the whole setter, not just part of it. Okay, and you'll note this thing here is unhappy because Ripple I haven't imported and yada, 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 yada. We don't care too much because we're about to throw it all away. We're going to get rid of the Visual State Manager for the moment. Okay, so first things that we don't care about. We don't care about the selected border. We don't care about the mouse over border. We don't even care about the row. What we actually want here is just a content presenter. So inside of a template, the content presenter actually holds the content that's going to be presented. In this case, the template for our given item. So that will be inside of a grid. What is this thing here? This is the whole show selection bit. Turn it off. We don't need it. Boom. And then, yeah, so hot reload is unhappy because I deleted stuff and it's trying to use it. Probably because it's still referenced inside this Visual State Manager. And I'm going to just comment this out because we're going to come back to it because we want this style to look pretty. Okay, so we're going to relaunch. And hopefully we get something close to what we had before. Not perfect, but close. And then I'm going to open up, while that's thinking about recompiling itself, I'm going to open up Snoop. Because I think this is one of those areas that's good to see. Okay, so you'll note I have my list box. I'm clicking, clicky, 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 clicky. No worky. Perfect. Okay, so if I drag my cursor over here, I just kind of want to show what this ended up doing to the visual tree. So if I select into here and I look here, so here's my list box item. So from my XAML, this is my list box item. And inside of my list box item, there is a border, which is this border here. And then inside of that border is a grid, which is this grid here. Inside of that grid is a content presenter, which is right here. And inside of that content presenter is another grid. This grid is the one that comes from my data template. So when you lay out a control template, which is different than a data template, what it does is when that control is rendered, the stuff inside of the data template is added. And if it is a container control, like ListBox item is, the content presenter, it just goes looking for it and goes, this is where I put your content. And it just dumps it in for you. So this guy here is more or less a placeholder for, hey, where should I dump that data template when I get around to rendering it? Which is great. So what we are going to do is we are going to change this thing up. So, because what we would like to have happen, because there is still selection, just to be clear. So there is, and actually I can show that. Let me jump. Oops. Did I just snoop? I may have just snooped Visual Studio. See, that's exciting. Okay, so if we come in here and I look at ListBox and I go to select selected item, I can see there is a selected item. And if I control click, I can unselect the item. And if I click again, I can see the selection. So there is selection happening. Right? And if I go down to my ListBox item and look at is selected, I can see it's selected now. If I control click on it, it is no longer selected. So I can see, so even though I haven't rendered the selection in any meaningful way, there is still selection behavior happening. So this is the WPF lookless controls, is the ListBox item has some behavior. The code behind for the ListBox is doing things like watching your mouse events and going, you clicked on me, therefore I become selected. The code does that. But the UI, the template for it, gets to determine what does is selected mean. And in this case, we haven't done anything with is selected. So as far as the template's concerned, it goes, But we want to add some meaning to it. Let's add some meaning to it. Okay, so best way to render that blue line. And the one thing I'm thinking about here real quick, if I look at this guy a little bigger, is the blue line does not appear to affect indentation. So things should not shift over when selected or not. So I think what we're going to do is we are going to put you down here. We're going to just add an additional little guy that will sit over the top, I think. Perhaps. Yeah, let's do that. So what we are going to do is we're just going to add On this content presenter, I'm just going to margin him over, say, I'm going to make it a little bigger than what was shown in that UI because it's just so hard to see. Okay, so I'm going to just push things over 4 pixels off the side. And then in terms of Z order, I want the blue line to be on top. So what we're going to do is do border, background, and I'm just going to code it to blue for the moment. And we're going to do width of 4. Great. That's not even close to where I want you to be. So then we're going to go horizontal alignment left. So I've kicked it over to the edge. And the only reason it's not all the way left on the window is because our list box here, if I do something like background gray, our list box isn't all the way left. So that's the only reason why it's whoop. Too many keystrokes. Too many keystrokes. So that's the only reason for that there. So we're gonna do that. Snoop, go ahead and hide for a minute. You've been wonderful. And actually, we might just do something like light gray, just so I can continue to see the background of this. Okay. So this would get it to be blue there. I think we actually probably want something more like a dark blue in there. But what we really want to do is we want this thing to respond to selection. And I had commented out the this visual state group, but I think this is going to be the point where we bring this guy back in. So typically elements that we want to, we'll say, animate, because in this case we could just flash visibility on and off and do a pretty hard bang bang bang. That feels yucky. We're gonna give it some pizzazz. Selected border. I'm intentionally picking on the same name that we had before. So you will note there's also multiple types of selection. So we could have different because there's selected, unselected, and then there's focused and unfocused. So for example, when I'm on the window here, I am now focused. When I'm on Visual Studio, I am unfocused. And so if I want it to look different in that unfocused behavior, I could do that. If I want to have it look different in unselected versus selected, I could do that. So what we're going to do here is I think I'm just going to play with the opacity again, and I'm going to just set that to 0. So it's invisible. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put this guy back. Okay. And then we are going to do, and mouse over we don't care about. We're going to, we'll leave the visual state, but we'll get rid of the storyboard. Hey. I understand you're confused. Do what I told you. Thank you, Visual Studio. Okay. We don't care about those. Let's see. Ease out. We'll leave the transitions in place. But in our case, selected border to, and we're going to go with like 0.8. And selected border to 0. So it's targeting the selected border object down here, or I should say it's targeting the element that has the name selected border, which should match. Huzzah. Targeting the property on it of opacity, and it's going to animate it to 0.8. And I think we just turn off the duration here and let the generated duration take over. Do something like that. Cannot selected border net. Yes. So I think we just ran into a case where hot reload reached its limit and said, yeah, I'm done. I appreciate you trying, hot reload. I appreciate it. Okay, so let's come over here. Let's go here and we'll go click. A little slow. Speed that up. Go down to like 2. That's not bad. Almost want to add a second item so we can click around and see it go. That's not bad. We're gonna bring that down to 0.2 in both cases. Okay, so that's pretty good. And then I am noticing I'm getting the little dot outline. That's kind of a default Windows thing to show you where keyboard focus is, because there is a separation between keyboard focus and mouse focus. But in this case, it's kind of ugly, so we're going to turn it off. Okay, so I think that's as simple as a setter here. The property in question is focus visual style. The value you want to turn it off is null. There. No more ugly rectangle. So it is worth noting that when you do that, you are taking away a bit of accessibility for people to know where their keyboard focus is located. So oftentimes when you take away that focus visual style, you want to replace it with something else. This is a demo. So, but real apps, consider the accessibility implications of doing so. Okay, so that gets us there, and I might dial this back just a little bit. That is not really a good size of blue. So let me see if I can open this guy up in like, I think I might have a paint version of this guy. All right, 1 second. I unfortunately have a bunch of other stuff sitting on my clipboard that is not to be shown yet. So I'm just going to come in here and get the actual RGB of this guy. So I opened it up in a paint application and copied the RGB there. And I think what we are going to do is we're going to just downgrade you to 2 now. That seems a little narrow. Let's bump you up to 3. There, that's probably okay. Okay, so that gets me up to there. That gets me to there. That's pretty close. Okay, so we do need to address a couple more things, but I think before I get too carried away, I'm going to add some more items to this because we're getting to the point where we aren't seeing a lot of stuff. So let's add some stuff. Boom, boom. Okay, so this is going to be Pedro web development, and then this is a 13, and then the description. So this thing has this additional details bit, and I'm trying to decide if we implement that or not. We'll see. Additional details. New website. Oh, I really need to get this in a. So I keep doing new website, small business, painter, I guess. Google as requested. This text is extra long too, because when it goes ... I want to clean that up. Let's see. So this is going to be Dallas, Texas, 75228. Number of credits is clearly 24. And LEIGHANN. what meant additional details. Boom. New website. Small business. Blog. Online store. Social media. Awesomeness with cool graphics. Because why not? Okay. And then that one lives in Payette, Idaho. I have no idea how to say that. Missed a comma on all these. Notice that. Let's see. 83661. They're all nationwide. This is also 24 credits. And this was also 14 minutes ago. Okay. Let's pop that and see how that looks, because now we can click around and see the selection move. A little bit easier than on off. Pretty good. So one thing that's worth noting, you'll see how at the top it's snapping. Even when I do this, such that it always tries to do a whole item. That's default behavior for the ListBox, specifically to support virtualization. So if you have a large number of items in your ListBox, you want this for performance. You can change it so that you can kind of go turning smooth scrolling on, but that will kill virtualization. So be aware. There is a trade-off. That doesn't look too bad. I think we done good. So let's turn off. Okay, so we are going to get rid of this light gray background for starters. And then I want to address the text wrapping a little bit. Because I want to put this down to like 350. That's 3,500. That's a little too big. Okay, so perfect. 350 will work. So this exposes one more kind of minor problem here. Bring this guy back down. Make him small in the corner. So you'll note in the image, after 2 lines of text, it gets clipped. So we have not addressed that problem. This is allowed to grow infinitely based upon the size of the text in our description. And we don't really want that. So if we come down here, let's see. I think we can do let's see, line height. I'm thinking we could do a max height. Let's see. Probably just want a max height here. And let's go with, I don't know how big that is, so we're gonna just look. Boom. Tell me how big you are. So currently it is 46, and I want about 2/3 of that. 46. Math's hard. So let's bump that down to like, what is that, 31? Okay. So that gets us close. But you'll note we've now lost our ... and that's not good. So we do that. I think what I want is wrap with overflow. Or what is it? Text trimming. Word ellipse, because we want it to go I think I want it to wrap. This is one of those areas where I always have to play with this to figure out where it needs to go. Because text trimming is going to trim down. How do I get you to wrap and trim at the same time with a max number of lines? Let's look, because I honestly don't remember. WPF, text block, trim max lines. There's a way to do it on the... Let's see, what did you say? Oh, hush, thank you. Wow. Stack Overflow. Let me guess. April Fool's Day. I've rolled over to April 1st, and I'm thinking that's what this is. That's fun. You can get the functionality. You can just use the plain old height property. What I was doing. That I've only set the width here to show the 2 lines of text with the character of this. You should let a grid set the width. Okay, so oh, so I had it right. I just cropped it too short. So 35, 34, 33, 32. So I literally just rounded the wrong way. Okay, great. That was hard. Now, what I'm going to do here, I rarely like doing things that set a fixed height. I much prefer to use max and min height to allow for growth in different directions. We might do that just to allow it to grow a little bit. There. That gets us into a much nicer space. This now wraps. That looks cleaner. We have the selection. There we go. That's pretty. Cool. I think this is pretty close. I'm going to clean this up just a little bit. So I'll leave these visual states in here if anybody wants to do something different. Because we're only playing with a couple of these. So you'll note the unfocused is actually sending the opacity to 0. I don't think I like that. Let's do something like that. Maybe bump it down just a little bit more. So that when I click off of the window, it kind of fades away. Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. Okay, so that goes there. This would probably want to become not a hard-coded color, but that could be moved out. Actually, I may have changed my mind. We might go down to just a width of 2. I think now that I've got some items in there. And I'm going to change this guy here to horizontal alignment left. I'm just going to slap a little margin on that, I think. Yeah, I just don't like it. You lose that blue up against the edge. Margin left 2. Just offset it just a little bit so it's obvious where that thingy is. Yeah, now I can see it. Because when it gets right on that edge, it gets lost. I think that works. Cool. Okay. I am going to take the picture for this. And I'm going to add that in to here. Paste. Oh, I have to stop debugging if I want to rename the file, apparently. We're just going to add it in. Let's see. Desired display. So that, and then we are just going to real quick make sure you aren't ever being copied to the output directory. Perfect. Excellent, 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 excellent. Okay, so then the only question is, do we want to implement any of the other things that are down on here? Because we do have something like this little circle that we could implement. And we've got the additional details bit that we could... yeah, let's show doing it. That might not be that bad of an idea. Let's do it real quick. It won't take long. Okay, so down here, what we're going to do is we'll just add a couple booleans. So public bool show additional details. Boom. And then public bool show, how about show as modified? We'll do something like that. Okay, so down here, let's see. So these two have show additional details true. So we'll turn these on. Show additional details true. And then this one also has show as modified true. I don't know what that little blue circle in the corner stands for. So I'm going to just declare that it means show as modified. So I'm going to just shrink this down a little bit. Okay, so we'll start with the additional details bit. So to implement that, I would probably go down to here and let's see. So this is number of credits. This is going to be in the description bit. So we're going to break this up. So let's do some fun stuff. So this is going to be run text additional details. Sure. And then this will be run text. And then this guy here is going to end up here. That goes like that. That goes like that. And then let's just relaunch and make sure this works. Should still give me basically the same, aside from the fact that I can't spell additional. Perfect. Okay, so there's that. So that gave it to me there, except for it automatically tacked on a bunch of stuff. And what we want to do here is we really want to just conditionally add it. Is there an easy way to do this? I don't know if there's an easy way to drop one of these. How do we drop one of these guys? Would it be better to just swap out the text blocks? That could be. That might be a cleaner approach. Is just swap one for the other. And move it back and forth rather than... So I don't think I actually want to deal with this. So that was a bunch of rambling. Let me explain. Inside of a text block and several other types of controls, even though a text block is largely considered a single element that can contain a bit of text, it technically can contain what are called inline elements. So things like runs, links, etc. There's technically another level of nesting if you want to get to down here. The big advantage of doing something like this is you could do like foreground teal, right? And that ends up giving you something akin to this. Or if you wanted to do, say, font weight bold, not black. Bold is spelled with a D. You end up with something a little more like this, which is great. That's kind of what we want. We want that nice little included bit, which is kind of what we want. Kind of not. Trying to decide how I want to go about doing it, because I don't want it just to always show up, but I'm thinking I might just do a second text block and swap these guys back and forth. So if I do something like this, and then this guy is going to go up here, that goes like that, that goes like that, that goes like that, boom, boom, boom. And then what we will do is we will do we need a value converter here real quick. So how about window resources, Boolean visibility converter. Boom, got you. And then X key. Boom, gotcha. Okay, so we got us one of those Boolean-y converter thingy mabobbers, which is a fancy way of saying I can convert from that bool. So visibility, binding. Oh, this one I actually want inverted. So we'll have to invert this one. This one we can do straight because this one will align. So visibility, binding, and then this is show additional details, converter, static resource, Boolean to visibility converter. So visibility in WPF is an enum. The three values are visible, collapsed, and hidden. The difference being whether the thing occupies space where it's at. And in this case, we're just going to line these up. I'm going to clean up the fact that we've duplicated all this stuff here in just a second. But for now, we're going to do this. Oh, actually, this is probably a perfect time to clean this up for what's coming. So let's go up here and create a new style. So the way we can share properties is with styles in WPF. And we will give this a key of, I don't know, description style. Sure. And then I just kind of want, I don't know, most of these properties. We're going to come up here, paste. Let's see. So I think we can do something really fancy here real quick. We do this. We do this. We get rid of the ones we don't care about. I usually don't like to put margin in them, but in this case, I think we're going to. And then I think what we can do is we can just do multi-cursor, setter, property equals quote, and then close quote. Close quote. I'm intentionally trying to set these up to line up evenly. Gonna have to adjust a couple of them. So if I do this, line all of you up, then I can get away with more multi-cursor magic, where we go value equals is perfect. Oh, actually, I go value equals, I go end. Oh, it's not as cool as boom, boom, there. Then I'll just clean that up. Clean that up, clean that up, clean that up. That looks fine. Okay, so now we've got a style that we can leverage down here so we don't have to deal with all this duplication. We'll just go style, get static resource, description style. That way, if we decide to change any of these things, they both will pick it up, because that sounds like a good thing. Grab this guy. Ba-ba-bum. I'm just going to put you in line there and put you here. But I want to change the visibility of this guy. So what we're going to do here is actually something a little different. So slightly different technique. Text block style. And then rather than doing style with attribute syntax, like what is here, we're going to do style inheritance, like we did earlier. But by doing it this way, this gives us the ability. What are you squawking about? Oh, it wants a target type. Text block. By doing it this way, it gives us the ability to leverage style triggers. So in this case, what we would like to do is a data trigger binding on, what was it? Binding show additional details. Shun al details. And if the value is, so this is the one without it. The value is true, right? Because this guy is visible by default. Setter property visibility value gets collapsed. I think I did that right. There, I did it wrong. I might have my Boolean logic backwards. So show additional details of true. Yeah, so that worked. There we go. Okay, so these ones now have additional details. That one doesn't. And all we did is swap that out. I think the color is roughly the same. Let's check. Where did I set that border? Secondary hue mid brush. So we're going to just leverage that same brush down here just to make sure those things stay the same, because they look like they are roughly the same. It looks pretty close. Realizing I'm kind of blocking some of my coding when I do that, so we're going to drop this down. Okay, so then the last thing that we have is this little blue dot. I'm kind of wondering if I should add a little more left margin on this grid. We're going to give ourselves a little more margin. Okay, so the blue dot here is left of the name, and making the blue dot is not the challenge. Getting the blue dot positioned is the fun one. So let's create the blue dot. What did I call that? Show as modified. Got an extra semicolon there. Okay, so we are going to just do a border control. Let's see, with a height of 4, a width of 4, and a corner radius of 2. So with all 4 of the corners with a radius of 2, a height of 4, the thing will make a circle. All right, and I'm just going to grab the RGB for that guy. I assume it's going to be, yeah, it's the same as the other one. So we should probably make a little thingy mabobber for it. So that gives us that. And I don't know if you can see it. It's right there, which isn't where we want it. Okay. But the problem is we are inside of a grid, and we actually want it left of the grid by a little bit. So, clever trick. -10, 0, 0, 0 gets us, and then horizontal alignment left, I think kicks it 10 pixels to the left. So, fun trick. You can use negative margins to actually shift things outside of the bounds. The one thing you have to be careful on is if you're inside of a control that has clip to bound set. So for example, if I set clip to bounds true, our little dot goes away. So anything that goes outside of the bounds of our grid is just clipped right off. Some controls have this on by default, some don't. In this case, a grid is a pretty lightweight control. It doesn't have much on at all. But since it's off, we can use this to shift this guy out. Their circle looks a little bigger. So let's bump this up to like a 6. 6 and a corner radius of 3. And let's see what that looks like. That looks a little better. I want to push it left a little more. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. I almost think that this thing is expected to have a slightly more left margin. That's pretty darn close. Now, the last thing we have to do is hide it if it's not part of our if it's not one of the ones that's supposed to show as modified. So we were going to do the same visibility that we did a minute ago. Visibility binding, show as modified, converter, static resource, Boolean to visibility converter. Now it only shows up on the last one. We got it all. And I'm 9 minutes before I normally quit. Booyah. I think that came out rather well. Yeah, this landed rather nicely. So, if you want a custom list box, you want it a little closer to pixel perfect, I think this is a rather nice implementation. I'm going to just shift this back 1. Yeah, just enough to, just about 1 pixel to get it off the edge. I think that looks rather nice. Sweet. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Okay, so I'm going to commit this and we will push it. So adding example of custom styling a list box. Commit, push. So for anybody who is interested in it, the code for it lives out in this repo, specifically underneath ListBox custom style. So there is all the code that we wrote. Easy mode. Easy mode. WPF is fun. I think it's fun. So, cool. With that, I think I'm probably going to wrap up for tonight. Code Life, thanks for dropping in with the raid. I appreciate it. Always nice to see people coming in. Like I said, I have fun going through and doing fun styling like this. So if people have questions or things that they would like to see done, I am always happy to do it, especially if it's a good example to show off different techniques and styling. So most WPF controls kind of work the same way when it comes to styling them out, custom templates. If you're looking for a reasonable place to start, the Material Design in XAML has a lot of great styles to look at. It's all open source. You can use it as a starting template to understand what's there, what you can do. It's got pretty good examples of custom controls if you want to start writing rather than just a new UI for an existing control. If you want to build a complete custom one, there's samples of it in there that you can take a look at. I'd probably tell you to look at something simple like either the drawer host or ripple controls are pretty nice, simpler, not overly complex templates to look at. But with that, yeah, I think I'm going to wrap up for the night. Tell everyone happy coding. See everyone next week.